Welcome to the Golf Channel Academy, and I'm Rick Smith, and we're at the beautiful Treetops Resort in Gaylord, Michigan. We're in the heart of probably some of the prettiest northern Michigan climate you'll ever see. You see behind me, we're actually at the bottom of the driving range at the Treetops North site, where we have 4 golf courses out here, and we're home in the par 3 shootout, where some of the greatest players in the game have been here. It's a great practice facility as well, and we look forward to having you join us. And joining me today is Brett LeBrock, who's been with me for quite a long time now. I actually went down to Australia to an Australian teaching summit and brought him back. I thought he was the most talented guy I'd met over there, and he's helping me with all the academies at Treetops and also down at Tiburon at our academy down in Naples, Florida. And we do a lot of corporate things together, and we have a chance to spend a lot of time together as it relates to the golfer that's trying to learn to get better, but we get frustrated with the fact that we don't see him practice properly. And I think part of our lesson, we end up spending time trying to tell them how they need to practice after they leave us.
Yeah. We see so often that the players down the driving range are not practicing with a purpose. A player comes down, they slice their drive to the right, but they think that's why they play off a high handicap. And it's important to understand who we are as a golfer, and that's where handicaps can be misleading. You can have a 15 handicap golfer with a 10 handicap golf swing and a 22 handicap chipping action and maybe a 30 handicap course strategist, and that's why he's playing off 15. So when we do go to the range, it's important to know who we are. We're going to get into that in the next segment and identify that and show you how to split a practice routine up to identify those areas.
There's no question, when you look at how to practice, we're going to talk about the mechanical ways, we're going to talk about the mental ways, and also we're going to get a little bit more visual with our practice. There's different ways to do it. We're going to put it together for you so you understand that when you're out hitting balls, you're not just standing out there wasting your time. You're probably a player that likes to go out to the range, maybe likes to play all the time, but when you go to the range, you're just out there going one after the other. You really don't have anything in your mind. And Brett, we've always said this to people. Number one, go find out from a reputable teacher what your problems are. So when you go to the range, you have something to work on. I mean, you might as well not go and practice if you don't have good things to focus on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the adage of practice makes perfect is definitely false. It's practice makes permanent. So if you're practicing the wrong things, you're practicing to become permanently bad. So it is important to go to a reputable teacher and find out what is going on. So you've definitely got a plan or a purpose when you do hit your practice station.
No, there's no question too. You think about the types of practice you can do. I know there's a mental type of practice, which we're going to get into. There's also, if you had an hour and a half, say 3 or 4 times a week, and you broke it down into segments of that hour and a half, would you agree that if you spent 45 minutes on the mechanical side, 45 minutes on the non-mechanical side, now that's short game included,
Sure.
I think that would really help people to grow as a player and yet also not get so bound with mechanical thoughts when they go out to play, because ultimately they need to groove something good, as we're talking about, to go out there and play without having a lot of thoughts all the time. And they can get into the golf course then.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and let's say that you were a person, here's just a typical workstation,
Sure.
broken shafts, or you look at these target rods, you look at golf clubs on the ground. Just explain what we've got here.
What we're looking at here is we're in mechanical mode just here. And, do you have to think of something when you're working on your swing? If you have to make change, yes. It's a conscious thought first before you put it into, subconscious before it comes automatic. But we need to target that area first when we do start practicing. So this is what we call our mechanical station here, or our workstation. And when it's set up like this, we've got shaft rods here to identify. But one important point is when you're making change with dynamics and mechanics and trying to get the right blend and feel together, an important club to use is a 6-iron off a tee with really no target. We've got an intermediate target, but our attention is on our body motion here, making changes. If you're, setting up to a golf ball on the ground and working on so many different things in your swing, plus trying to get it off the ground in the air to a target, that's when we see a lot of players get overcooked and they become ball outcome focused instead of not, body aware.
Well, I think the biggest problems that we see too, Brett, with golfers is that because they're so ball oriented in result oriented, they fail to go through the process that they need to go through.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they'll hit a bad shot and they'll throw it out. And I think they need to stay with something and learn that and understand that, yes, it's dynamically changing, but it takes time to do that. And I think teeing the ball up is fine. And I also think too, when you're working in a workstation, this allows you to, if you make a few divots, you're not moving all over the place and destroying the workstation that you've created for yourself.
Sure.
And I think we'll get into some of these other workstations as we go. But go ahead and let's use this. This is a great one for top of swing. Go
Yeah,
ahead and demonstrate.
for example, let's say a golfer at the top of the golf swing is lacking shoulder turn. So what you would do is actually you might have a ball on a tee here with your 6-iron, take your address, and for every one ball you hit, you need about 3 drills in between with no golf ball, trying to create that feel and awareness of what our body's doing. So with my address position here, I might go back and stop and hold it, and this is my reference point here to make sure my left shoulder is back, for example, just to make sure I've got sufficient shoulder turn. So I might do 3 of these, get the feel, and then on the third one, go ahead and fire it and hit my shot. Then I'll back away and repeat the process.
Go ahead and set up to it again. And you can see if you're having problems getting your left shoulder over the right knee, and sometimes it's a good thought when you've been hanging to the left on the backswing in terms of body motion. We see a ton of that, but you can see that as you go back, you can turn and get into position here, and that's a beautiful shoulder turn. Left shoulder's behind the golf ball, right knee is stable. Good fundamentals here, but the point is a station like this can help you. I think another thing too, Brett, if you can just step over here, is that when you look down the target line here, is that if I'm having problems with cutting the golf ball or hooking it too much, I like an intermediate target when I'm working on the mechanical aspects, because now if I go down my target line, I sight it from here and I walk in, and I will, instead of making a big alignment adjustment to keep the ball left or right, I'm going to stay fairly square, and I'm going to say to myself, if I'm having problems drawing the golf ball, I may move slightly to a closed position, but now I've got all this area to the right to visualize as if I make my backswing to start the ball out in the right direction. Same thing goes if I'm cutting the ball or I'm trying to cut it and I've hooked too much. I like to stand here and make the handle and the club head move more to the left and try to start the ball to the left. Eventually I'll figure out a way to not hit a pull hook with it. I'm going to start bringing the ball back and hitting fades. I think going the opposite direction really pays great dividends, because if you go a mile to get the inch, you go way over on the other side. Slicers learn to hook, hookers need to hit slices. You find the middle ground a lot faster than that. Now, when we come back, we're going to get into more workstations. We're going to talk a little bit about more non-mechanical issues, and we're going to talk about you, and we're going to try to get you to hit the golf ball a lot better. Now, let's assume you've been given a pretty good tip. You're working on it on the practice tee, and you go home. You put your clubs away, and all of a sudden you're just done. You don't think about it. You watch TV, you do whatever, you go to dinner. There's a time that every good player I've ever worked with has said, you know, that makes sense. I'm seeing the result, and I'm going to really sort it out, and I'm really going to think about it. And to me, what they're doing is taking the side of the game that was mechanical, that then was feel, they're then going into almost a video play in their mind, and they're sitting down, they're visualizing what they have to do, what it looks like, what it feels like. You see people moving around as if you look at a shadow boxer, they're walking around without a club and they're rehearsing a motion. You know, it's quite amazing. I think it's a helpful thing.
It's exactly like the actors rehearsing their lines for a movie. You know, they go over and over again until it becomes second nature. So, you know, you're trying to put your body and mind in a new position, and visualizing that's really key.
I think it speeds up the entire process. You ought to try that. You know, Brett, I think it's important that we get into the identification of what something is wrong. I think we always say, why do people, you know, the best tour players, they have teachers, and part of it is because they cannot see themselves. You hear every great player says, I can't see it, my feel is lying to me. Yet one of the things that we think should happen on a practice tee is that you need to learn to identify what your ball, by your ball flight, what some of your problems are. And go ahead and explain that. I mean, there's no question that's a huge issue.
What we see a lot at driving ranges is, you know, 85% of the world slice the golf ball, but when you ask them the question, why is it going right, they still scratch their head. Instead of saying, well, my club face was open at impact. One definite thing, folks, is if the ball curves right, you can say an absolute is the face was open. If the ball curves left, you can say, face was closed. The other contributing factor is your path. But the only way to identify that is if we do take a divot. If the divot points left, we know it was an out to in path. If it points right, it's 2 in to out. If you don't take a divot, then now we have to recommend going to a teaching pro or knowing someone to identify what is going on in the downswing.
And if you can't do that, I think little practice stations such as this one are outstanding to make you aware. And then this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to take this, which I love, I'm going to put it on the ground, and if I'm hitting shots to the right, what I like about this, which a lot of people do here in terms of setting up to it, they hit it off to the right. I stick this right underneath the orange tip, and if I'm hitting it to the right, chances are I'm going to start doing more things to get that golf ball over to the left. So as Brett said, hey, if you're hitting slices, the face is obviously open. But I always say, why is it open? Okay? So what I'm saying by that is if I'm set up to it here, and all of a sudden I've got this steep over the top move, well, that club face can't release. And if it does, I may hit a shot that's so far left, I may top the ball because it's a steep angle of attack. And so, but how do I know that my path is that over? Well, this thing right here will create a wake-up call that will really give you a good understanding of where your path is. I mean, if you're going back and you start down and you can see that the club is approaching from the inside and back along, well, and then the face is open, well, at least you'll know that, hey, the face is open and maybe I'm underneath my plane. For example, if I'm here, that's a push, kind of a push right shot, face is open, I didn't hit this object, which means I didn't come over the top to hit that ball to the right. But if I come down steeply, boy, that's all of a sudden that thing's gonna, it goes this way, breaks free, and it's like, oh, wake up call, where am I? I know where I am now, I'm too over the plane. And I think things like that people need a little bit more of. We never see people on the practice tee with a good workstation.
Yeah, I think that's a key question, is always analyze what's going on at impact to influence the flight of my shot. You know, a common thing is we see a lot of back footers on the driving range. When we do that, you're going to face with a lot of fat shots and curve shots from that position. But how do we fix it? Well, this is where we're in mechanical mode now. Now, to do that, we're going to take a golf ball.
When he said back footers, what he meant is that that's an Australian term, is when that back foot's staying flat and they're not really aware of it and they're hitting it with their arms and slapping it. Go ahead and demonstrate that's what we see. And let's go ahead and let's do a couple drills that help people to understand that, hey, it's okay to, on the practice range, eliminate your ego and eliminate this big result of perfect shots and hit a shot like this. Take a look at what he's going to do.
So a great drill is to actually put yourself into impact. So my right heel is raised, I can push with my right foot, bow the shaft and then scrape forward and hold for 3 seconds.
Do the bowing of the shaft again because it gives you some resistance at the ground, which I like. See, he's pushing down with the club head and then he's feeling the leverage into a finish. Now notice also his finish. Right knee's touching left, right foot up on the toe, shaft down the back, chest belt buckle going to the target. That's a good exercise for somebody that's hanging back on the right foot. And last, I think it's important. You're on the golf course and you need to chart. I know the wives on tour are out charting their husband's result. They're saying, okay, ball left, ball right, ball long, ball short, you know, 2 hooks to the left, and they chart it off, and in 3 or 4 days that you pretty much are going to know, okay, this many 3 putts, you didn't get it up and down 5 times. You need to know what your weaknesses are so you have something to work on. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other side of practicing, and that is non-mechanical. Brett, you know, I know when people are beginning to play, they show up and they're not really sure what they should do in a lesson. And I think the number one thing is the worst thing you can do when you're trying to learn to play is to do a couple things. One, take a notepad because you need to remember certain things. Write down certain things that they're talking about, especially if it relates to you. The second thing is if you don't know and all you do is they're saying, a teacher says, well, do this and do that, and you're kind of nodding your head. If you don't understand what that person is saying, when the time is right, say, you know, what did you mean by that? So that you have a better understanding. Look, you paid for the lesson. The teacher wants to communicate, but there are a lot of ways to communicate to you as a teacher to student. And if you don't get it, ask the question, and don't be afraid of that. The other thing you can do, and we just talked about that.
Yeah, the final thing is going for a lesson is don't let the expectations get too high. And have fun with it and enjoy the process. Don't get so caught up on what just happened on the outcome of the shot. Enjoy the process of